All right, so this question gives us two line references, so we should read aggressively around them. So we're basically going to read the lines and in between and plus one sentence on either side. We want to play it safe here because it's not just a vocabulary question. They want the context. So we're looking specifically at the words wandered and marched. So we're going to pay attention to that. I'll start here. It was there, she told us at Columbia, in the midst of trying to find her true mission in life, that she wandered one afternoon into a lecture by the famous John Dewey, who was talking about his famous book, Democracy in Education. Professor Dewey was in his 70s by then, Miss Spivey said, but he still liked to chat with students after a lecture, especially female students, she added, sometimes over coffee, and see in their eyes the fire his words could kindle. It was after this lecture and subsequent coffee that Miss Spivey had marched to the Teachers College and signed up all aflame. 2 years later, she told a cheery, blue-suited woman from the WPA that she wanted to bring democracy and education to the poorest, darkest, most remote and forgotten corner of America. They sent her to Three-Step, Georgia. So my initial thought is that these words kind of mean what they mean, right? You wander is kind of you are going aimlessly somewhere. And then you march, you have purpose, right? So there seems to be a big contrast between these two words. Sometimes with vocab on the SAT, the words don't mean what they normally mean, and that's kind of confusing. But this isn't really a vocab question. This is like a line reference, like context, understand the passage question. So it shouldn't be all that weird that the words kind of mean what they mean, and we can see the contrast between them is pretty standard. So let's look at these choices. Dewey, knowing Miss Spivey wasn't very confident in her ability to teach, instilled in her a sense of determination. Well, he definitely instilled a determination. But we have to be careful here because I don't know what Dewey knew. It seems like he didn't know her. She just happened to be at his lecture one day. And so that's a pretty strong idea. We've seen that in other questions on this passage. We cannot make assumptions about what people know or assume or believe. We need to have proof of those things. And I don't see any lines here that tell us that Dewey knew what Miss Spivey was like. So that's too strong. Choice B, talking with Dewey over coffee made Miss Spivey realize how excited she was to teach in the poorest, most remote corner of America. Well, there's a little problem with that I have is she wasn't really excited to teach there quite yet, right? It says that happened 2 years later. So there's a little bit of a time jump there. But more important, this kind of gets the problem with choice A. Talking with Dewey over coffee made Miss Spivey realize how excited she was. She wasn't excited and didn't know it. She had no purpose. She was aimless and walked into this lecture and got a purpose out of it. It's not like he made her realize something that was already there. He helped her gain this purpose. There's a big difference between these two things. And on hard questions, those little differences matter. We have to train our brains to look for those things. And a lot of times it has to do with what is going on inside the characters' heads, what we're allowed to know and what we have evidence of, and what the choices say. They don't always match up, so we got to be careful. Choice C. After 2 years spent studying, Miss Spivey was anxious to start teaching and be in charge of her own classroom. Well, anxious is a negative word, but most of this seems positive, that she's excited to do it, she wants to do it, so I get a positive vibe from these lines about going to the poorest, darkest, most remote place. So that seems to not match. That's the only word, though, that doesn't really match. So I would look at D and C, and maybe if that's really terrible, I'd pick C. But let's look at this one. Miss Spivey's initial encounter with Dewey's ideas was somewhat accidental, aimless, but ultimately motivated her, gave her purpose, to a decisive, purposeful action. So you notice it lines up perfectly. D is definitely the answer. It's basically just reusing the exact same words that we used, which we were just defining the words that they used. Wandered and marched. Everything is all synonyms here. That's a really good sign. When you can, try to find matching ideas, these links between the lines and the choices. The more you can find, the better. We found a lot of them here, and so I'd be pretty confident that D is right.